Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Que Sepas. Today, we are talking about Women's History Month and celebrating with some incredible icons. Women's History Month is 31 days dedicated to celebrating and encouraging the study of the vital role women have played throughout society, throughout history, and within society. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Que Sepas. We have okay. Some technical issues. I apologize. The digital divide is very real. Women's History Month. Okay, I'm gonna try that one more time. We know that women throughout history have played pivotal roles in innovation, government, and beyond, and that many times they have not been credited. Learning about women's history is essential to not only our progress, but in the pursuit of a well-rounded education. Recognizing that textbooks, school curriculum, all of that is slow to change and reflect an actual understanding of the full history. And so we're very lucky to be joined by, like I said, two incredible icons. In 2011, Beyonce put out her song, Who Run the World? And it was more of a call to action at that time, saying, and we learned it's girls. Today, that's still a question. It's more a call to action, but also it's something that folks have taken to a different level. Empowerment for women. We still have a lot of work to do. And as I learn and I understand what the plight, the struggles, I am grateful and humbled to be able to learn from the various women that not only have raised me, but the women who I work with and the women who are part of my community. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. First, I want to welcome our two panelists. We have Stephanie Vasquez. She's the owner of Fair Trade Coffee here locally in Phoenix. And we have Dr. Danny Portillo. Dr. Portillo works for the Roosevelt School District. Before not getting into any of those details, I'm letting each of them introduce themselves. Miss Stephanie, do you mind starting?
Hi, everyone. Stephanie Vasquez here. I am the owner of Fair Trade Cafe, which is the longest standing coffee house here in downtown Phoenix, owned by a Latina. However, I think the hat that I'd like to acknowledge the most is that I am a very proud independent mama of three. I have a 26-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a little one who just turned 10.
Wow, that's wonderful. Thank you, Stephanie. Dr. Portillo.
Yeah, so thank you for the introduction, Danny. And I definitely don't consider myself an icon, but I am a worker, and I'm out there challenging some inequalities that we find across the state, especially in education, and then also working hard to make things better for our students and our staff, the community, especially here that we serve in South Phoenix. Also, Stephanie, I really enjoy your coffee and have frequented your shop several times. So I'm really glad that you're on here today too. So yes, I'm the executive director for teaching and learning in Roosevelt. So in some other districts, that title might be similar to a chief academic officer or assistant soup of instruction. So I oversee all instructional areas, along with some fiscal areas such as federal grants and others. So I can talk a little bit more about that later on. But yeah, I'm very proud of the work that I do, but I also am a bonus mama. When I got married, I had my immediate family with children that my husband has. So I have my bonus babies, two of them that live in our home. And then one that is at ASU right now. She's in the College of Business and Barrett Honors College. And then our son, who's a senior at Central High School.
Wow, that's really wonderful, and I'm trying to think of where to even start. But I think I want to go take some steps back and hear a little bit more about each of your upbringings. I think that as you've outlined here, as you've expressed and outlined here, you're both from very different sectors, and so I think I'd like to hear a little bit about how you ended up in that particular field. Ms. Dr. Portillo, do you mind starting?
Sure. So I'm from Honduras, Central America, Honduras, area called La Lima, and I'm very proud of that origin. I'm also very inclusive of other people's origins, and knowing that we all bring something to the table, right? And that's something I learned from my parents early on, is how do we advocate for ourselves and then also advocate and pull others up. So I'm really, I think that they probably had, and in my bio, I mentioned that they had a huge influence on me in that regard. So regardless what field I entered, they really inculcated in me that we needed to make sure that we served the community. So for example, my brother, his area of study is finance, but through his area of study, he also serves the community. My dad is retired now. He worked as a bookkeeper and accountant, but he worked through Chicanos por la Causa and CLR, and now does a lot of volunteer work. So whatever area or field, and my other brother does film, and he works a lot in helping the Boys and Girls Club and other agencies that are out there. So whatever it was that we decided to have our life, do with our life career-wise, that we needed to invest in bringing others up. So I think that's probably how I ended up in the position that I am now. But yeah, we immigrated from Honduras in the 80s, and went to live over in a little house that doesn't exist anymore, a little kind of adobe house over by Buckeye and maybe 13th Street, 13th Place. And you know, it was challenging as a kid coming from a totally different culture, and in the 80s, and you know, the area was really had some drugs and some other things going on. Went to Herrera Elementary. At that point, it was called Lincoln. It was a fabulous experience. As my first experience here in the US, learning English and learning to read and write in English. Then we moved on to the west side of Phoenix, Cartwright, and I had some excellent teachers along the way there too. And then I ended up at North High School, where I had some phenomenal opportunities in the IB program. By the way, I'm really excited to announce we're starting an IB elementary program here in Roosevelt. So we're really excited about that.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, and all the doors that the IB program opened up. And you know, the IB program really reinforced my parents' message, because they really focus on developing a world approach to correcting social injustices. And then bringing opportunity to the areas that you live in. So I think that's probably how I ended up on that route, and then did my formal studies. Yeah.
That's really wonderful. If I can ask, just for those who may not be aware, what is the IB program, and how is it different for elementary?
Sure. It's an international baccalaureate program. So it is a rigorous program. It's really projects-based learning, also following different themes that are common across all IB schools in the world. Okay. So there's a school has to apply and go through a candidacy phase in order to be able to become an IB school. But at that high school program, students go through the curriculum and really invest in themselves, but also the sense of service piece, right? So strong, rigorous academics, but for the purpose of going on into a career to create some type of a service and for the community. So that's it in a nutshell. When students graduate, they're able to take IB exams, and then those are highly regarded at the universities, and then for scholarship potential as well. So elementary, there's only 4 elementaries in the whole Phoenix Valley area. So we'll be the 5th, and all of those other 4 are in high socioeconomic areas. So this will be the first one in a area where we serve 98% free and reduced lunch.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it's an opportunity that our kids can also achieve at those high levels, not only the kids that live in those other zip codes.
Exactly. No, that's really wonderful. Thank you. Stephanie.
And Dr. Portillo doesn't see herself as an icon. I mean, come on.
There's a reason, right?
You know, that's something that I definitely need to highlight, is that as women, typically we don't stand in all of our greatness. And I just have to tell you that I see you, and the work that you're doing is absolutely incredible. And thank you for that, because you're serving our community. So thank you. A little about myself. My parents grew up in very small towns in New Mexico, and I mean, to be completely transparent, to talk about how small those towns were, my aunt and uncle were cousins. So it was extremely small. So my parents fell in love, and they have such a beautiful love story, a bold love story. And they got married and had my oldest sister. I am one of 4. They had my oldest sister and decided that, Carlsbad and Artesia, New Mexico weren't a place where they wanted to stay. So we had no family in Phoenix, and they just decided to move. No support, nothing. So, I mean, I have to definitely attest some of my boldness to the boldness of my parents. So they came out here and they just started their journey. My mother and father both worked in the fields, and as young people, like a lot of our families. And my father picked up a couple trades, and he was doing floor covering. So he came out, he did floor covering. And my mom, she didn't graduate high school at the time. And later on in life, she ended up getting her GED and just raising us. And she worked with Honeywell. And I think all these are important stories because it kind of just builds up where we were, where we went, and how capable we are.
Right.
So I grew up in the West Valley. I went to Maryville High School, go Panthers. And I absolutely love my neighborhood. And a lot like the neighborhoods that we serve, I don't think that I realized the disadvantage of our communities and the neighborhood. So as a young girl, I had always wanted to be a teacher. And that was like my end all be all. And no one in my family at the time had gone to college. So I literally stumbled my way through the college experience. And at the time, there wasn't a whole lot of guidance or support. So I went to college. I graduated from ASU at 2004 and got my first set of keys to my classroom at Santa Maria Middle School. And I remember vividly, I can see it right now, walking into the pod with my keys, all excited. And I walked into this classroom and it was empty. Like, when I say empty, no books, nothing. There wasn't an expo marker. And I walked into the office and I was like, hey, I'm kind of looking for my resources. And again, I share this story because I didn't realize the disadvantage, again, of our communities. So being the person that I was and seeing my parents model such just love and dedication to hard work. Hard work. I just kind of like dug in deep and I really, really dove into that Santa Maria community. And I loved teaching. That was literally my end all be all. Had someone told me, hey, Stephanie, you're going to own a coffee shop in downtown Phoenix, I would have just laughed. I knew absolutely nothing about coffee, nothing about business. Education was my passion. However, here I stand again, celebrating 14 strong years in our community. So fast forward, I went to a trip to Costa Rica, and it was the first time I had left the country because I had not traveled. And I just became this crazy tourist and went on alligator tours and zip lining and all this stuff. And I went to a coffee plantation. Now, I was that typical Starbucks coffee drinker, hey, give me my extra sugary latte. Here's my $5 and I'm out of here. There was nothing. And through this tour, I sat back and I watched as people were cultivating the land with this sense of pride that I had seen in my own family. And, when you start to hear the stories and that the agriculture in the States does not match for good coffee. And so I was just like, wow, what is this? And then they handed over these cups of coffee at the end so you can do a cupping. And they handed them over with such pride and love. And I was just like, what in the world is this? It's not the, hey, Stephanie, your vanilla lattes at the counter. It was not that experience. So I just sat back and, I turned into the teacher in me and I started doing research and what is this? And I started to learn that coffee is highly exploitative. And us as consumers, we don't know that because we're just waiting at the counter for our vanilla latte. And I learned that it's the second highest traded commodity next to oil. So I just thought, I just thought, wait a second. I cannot be the only ignorant consumer that there is. And again, reaching back into the whole education and wanting to teach, I decided to open a coffee shop, but not just any coffee shop. Like this wasn't going to be a vanilla latte, here you go, get out of here. This was going to be a space that was created from love and intention and to truly educate and empower our communities. Because even with that $5 purchase, the economical impact that you're making, not only here locally, but the impact that you're making on the other side of the country and it's generational. So that in a nutshell is how I got where I am.
No, I love that both of your stories have a global reach. You know, the IB program, and like that it is the standard, you know, globally, and then, you know, just the little things that, you know, we do every day that aren't actually we don't think about, but also being the son of Braceros, you know, like that type of stuff, and the way you put it is just changed my perspective about how I see those things and all the things that are exploitative. And so, no, the beautiful stories. Thank you for sharing those. I do want to kind of touch a little bit about something you mentioned, Stephanie. I mean, use the word boldness, and you know that stands out. Not to be literal, but what aspects you know, you kind of conveyed a little bit about your vision about, and, you know, how you built this company and the values. Can you talk a little more about just some of those things, some of those examples of that, how your boldness has continued through some of your endeavors and maybe some of the experiences you've had?
Absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, when you think of business, you think of a white man in a suit. And I'm far from that. So the simple fact that I have to stand in my boldness I think is something that needs to be acknowledged. As far as my business, it's always been people over profits. And I'm a social entrepreneur. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not a businesswoman. I'm a social entrepreneur. So the things that I do may not make everyone comfortable. And that's okay. So the way that I run my business, the way that I hire people, the way that I bring in goods, everything has a purpose. And it's not even on the second list where I'm looking at the cost, because I want to see what's the local impact, what's the global impact, you know, is this actually even going to create impact? And then we start talking about what is this going to cost, and how are we going to do this? And I know that you and I have had conversations about the very uncomfortable political stands that I've taken as well. I do not feel, I was asked one time, hey, Stephanie, what's the responsibility of a business to its community? And, you know, in all transparency, I don't think business owes anything to community. We choose to be part of the community. I think that it's a highly successful way of doing business. However, I don't think it's the only way of doing business.
For sure, for sure. No, thank you, Stephanie. Dr. Portillo, have there been instances in which that boldness has been something that has been a difficult thing to do for you?
Yes. And I want to answer that question, but I also want to touch upon what Stephanie was saying about cultivating the land. That's so we share that in common in observing others and in the cultivation. Of course, I like my gardening, but I'm not cultivating land, right? But just last year, I had the opportunity also to visit a tour in Copan in Honduras, a tour of a coffee plantation there, and also go through all the different complexities and different development of the coffee plant, right? And then you go on the tour bus all the way up into the cloud forest. And you listen and you watch the people work the land and then go back down to the way they process it. And in the end, we ended up in their lab. So they have a laboratory, there's a lot of science involved, and they have rubrics and they taste different kinds of coffee, and it's really highly involved, very, very scientific. But it was a great experience. So I'm glad that that experience motivated me to think more about not only the exploitive piece, which I know it is true, but also the beauty behind these products that we just consume, and we don't always know all of the process involved in that. And that's from our own culture, right? Coffee is very much a Latino element. So I really think it's important that we take the opportunity to learn as much as we can about what our origins are. Us, particularly my family in Lima. Lima is a banana town, a banana city. So it was built by the US fruit companies back in the early 1900s, when they had their big plantations in the American zones and built their cities, the hospitals, and they built their cities for all of their employees, American and Honduran employees. And it is something that they really built and supported with the infrastructure, but also it was very exploitive of our my family and other families that come from that area. So I invite all of you to really just think about what are your origins, be it mining, be it agribusiness, or whatever it was, and learn about that. And you might find a path that leads, like Stephanie, into this business, but anyhow, just wanted to kind of touch base on that, Stephanie, how nice that story is. As far as being bold, I think that I've always stood for how do we use education to help correct social injustices, right? How do we provide opportunity, and not only opportunity, but if kids don't have it in their mind that this isn't even, if they haven't lived or had an experience and their parents haven't, or perhaps nobody in their family has had certain experiences, it might not even occur to them that these are options for their path, and they might not even take part in taking advantage of those opportunities, especially when you're 12, 13, 15, 16, sometimes we're knuckleheads at that age, or sometimes we're not, sometimes we're very, we're sages already, but a lot of times those opportunities are there and we just don't see it as a path for us. And even our parents, they want the best for our students. I meaning as in our community's parents. They want the best for our students, but they don't always know exactly what paths are out there for their kids. So I think something that I did from the time that I was a teacher up to now in the role, now that I'm able to have a little bit more reach in the roles, is really working with our parents and our students and our teachers in presenting opportunities that they might not have thought of before and those past. And that's been bold because we are fighting against some negative attitudes or some I guess perceived limitations that others impose on us and we as a community impose on ourselves. So for boys and girls, right? So I've had to be bold in that sense. Programs cost money, and investment comes along with that, investment of time and people and finances. So I've had to be bold along the way and had to justify. And then always, because when you do something bold and different and someone chooses to invest in you and this idea that you have to return, right? You have to give them a return for their investment. So I think in being bold, there's also that responsibility that you have to make it work, right? Because oftentimes we represent that idea not just for that moment, but forever. Whenever that person or group of people are presented with an idea like that again, they might say, nah, because I remember Danny Portillo presented that to me in 1998 or 1999, and that didn't work, right? So we also carry that huge responsibility that in being bold, we have to be bold with a huge responsibility that we can't be bold and take risks that are not going to be positive for our community now or in the future.
Right. No, that's all that's so real. Even just by being raised by my tia and mi abuela, who, two incredible, strong women who, had there been an investment or had someone had been bold, that they knew it was a pathway. So many times we feel so alone and through those experiences. But I do want to now touch on the limitations or barriers that may have existed, especially related to our being Latino, or being Latina, and machismo is very much a thing that's still very deeply rooted in our community. It's a discussion that we've had here on Que Sepas, and as we try to navigate a way forward. What are your suggestions for making sure that we are dismantling those types of systems for our next generation, but also are there experiences that really have left impression, or you've characterized as not necessarily positive, that you have some something you'd like to share as a lesson, or whatever the case might be? Stephanie, do you have any thoughts on that?
So as a child, I had no idea what any of that was. I was completely ignorant and blind to it because it just was. It was just such a part of all of it. It was so deeply just embedded in everything. At home, I didn't experience it. I had an amazing father who was so good to my mother. However, as an adult, that's when it became extremely clear. And And I've had so many experiences. I mean, we can do a series of shows just on this. However, I think it's acknowledging it. And I think in order to dismantle something, it's not to fight back. Like fighting doesn't, we all know, fighting doesn't, it's to come in a space of love, and it's to have uncomfortable conversations. It's when I'm walking with my son and holding his hand and someone says something rude or derogatory to me, and I have a young man in my hand, that I have to stop and uncomfortably acknowledge that's very disrespectful, and please don't speak to me that way or any other person that way. Right. So I think when we're dismantling things, because that sounds like such a harsh word, that we need to do it within our boldness, with the essence of love and beauty and care for the other person, because I'd like to think that people aren't intentionally attempting to keep women down or keep people down in general. And that it's just simply, they just don't know what they don't know. So I think as a woman who walks forward with her eyes open, it's my responsibility to my little ones and to the community to say things. And that's my part in dismantling some of this.
That's great. No, that's wonderfully put. Dr. Portillo, what are your thoughts?
I agree with Stephanie, telling the truth in love. And then I also think it's important in our fields to be able to tell our stories and the stories of those that we might know, so that we present that, I guess, how do I explain this? Okay, in my role, so when I was the principal of Carl Hayden High School, right, we had more than 250 employees, and first female ever to be the principal of Carl Hayden High School.
Really? Wow. 60 years. It's more than 60 years when I was the principal that it's been in existence. Wow.
First female. So I think that when we reach certain I guess I don't know, certain levels, people might look at us and think that we're an exception, right? Like, oh yeah, she made, that, yeah, she's. So I think that it's really important that we share our story and those of other people in a form of modesty and honesty that talks about all the bad stuff too. Mm. So that they start making connections with that I'm not smarter than any of their friends or any of their colleagues or any of their students or any of the parents of the students in our systems, right? Mm. I'm not smarter, I'm not more special, I don't have anything more unique about myself than any of them do. And it's important that we always tell that story from that perspective and, from that sense of modesty, so that they can see that it's not impossible and I'm not like this outlier. Well, technically we are right now, but that's not because I have some specialty about myself. It's just the opportunities that I had and had the chance to take advantage of. But given those same opportunities, anybody else would be able to reach that. So one of the phrases I often say is, well, I'm not smarter than you and I did it, right? So just to be able to open those doors. So that's one thing that I've done in trying to break down some of those barriers. The other thing is, I still struggle with this a lot. And just yesterday had this conversation with someone about the self-imposed, I don't know if it's cultural or if it just might be my family, but the sense that telling about your accomplishments is somehow like self-promoting and bragging, and that's a negative personality trait to have. And I think that in our everyday relationships with people, that probably you don't want a person that's always being cocky or bragging about things. But the responsibility that we hold as a representative, as a female and as a Latina, requires me to be a little bit more self-promoting, not self-promoting, promoting of the things that I've done, not for my own self-growth, but the growth of all those that see me. And that's really difficult for me. And I think it's difficult for a lot of Latinas. We tend to, and I'm painting us all with a broad brush, which is what we don't want people to do. but many of us tend to have a sense of having to make things right and take care of things and, oftentimes it might be that someone else has this great idea, but we're the worker bees that make it happen and make sure that it happens right and that it's quality. And that person isn't always the person that's in front of everyone giving the speech and like talking about or getting the credit about things, right? And that's just part of how we're, I think, brought up, especially like being a big sister to my little brothers, taking care that things happen and work out. As a teacher, always, if I were the lead of my teacher team, I always gave the praise to my team, and I took the responsibility, and same thing as a principal in the work that I do now. But we often have to break that part of our cultural like tethers, I guess, and know that promoting the things that we accomplish is necessary for the rest of the people that we represent to move up.
Right. No, no. And I keep going back, I keep thinking about not only the accomplishments, but also characteristics we have and like how we own them. And thinking of my childhood and feminine qualities that I may have exhibited or were a negative thing. Can you like share a little bit about femininity, being a feminist? What does that mean? And how do you elevate just your identity, especially related to your identity as a woman? And so, Dr. Portillo, do you mind?
Okay, me? Okay. So I'm still on that journey, right? I often, so in all transparency, I know we probably have thousands of people watching, but we all have our insecurities. And I know part of being a woman that I think complicates femininity and feminism. On the femininity side is that we do, say if we were a male in our work, of course we would want to appear neat and put together. And that's about it. And the focus would be on our work. And as a woman, if we do not pay as much attention to our femininity and how we look, then oftentimes impressions might be, well, she doesn't take good care of herself. How can she take good care of this company or this organization or her employees? And people look at our femininity as a representation of whether we're taking care of ourselves or not, if our nails are done, if our hair is done. However, if your nails are too done or your hair is too done or your outfit is too fitting, then the conversation goes into like, look how vain she is. Her focus is on how she looks and now not on leadership. So that's always something that I struggle with. I often get so caught up in the work that I don't think about it too much, but then it just keeps on creeping in my mind often. And then also like simple things like when I first became a principal, I was one of the youngest principals ever. I was only 29 my first year as a principal. And I had super long curly hair. And I cut it off like short, like a pixie cut, thinking that that was what a professional woman looked like. And that I wouldn't be taken seriously, and going on with that trait of hair. Up to a couple of years ago, I would go into my weekly blowouts at the salon to get it all straight and make it look a certain way that we think is how professionals need to look. And I think as I get a little older and more secure in my femininity, I've embraced my curls, I've embraced my ethnicity. And I think that that's something that we have to give our girls permission to. As yesterday, one of the student government members, one of our 8th graders at Barr Elementary School, she has beautiful long curly hair. And I thought about telling her, Mija, and also mentioned how smart she is, how prepared she was, how eloquent she was. And then as far as her femininity, I mentioned, and I'm so glad that you're embracing your curls, Mija. And I would have never really thought to do that before until I reached this age and thought, why did I fight all that? And so that's just an example of femininity. I don't know if Stephanie wants to talk, and then I can touch upon feminism.
Okay. Yes, and I appreciate you separating the two like that. I you kind of just lumped them together, and this is certainly a time for me to learn as well. Stephanie, what do you think?
Oh, everything you just said was so beautiful, and you're absolutely right. They are two totally different topics. They really are. femininity in it of itself. I remember as a young girl, my mom braiding my hair and holding onto the sink, and she would pull so tight and my eyes would go back, and like appearance was a big deal. The way you look is a big deal. And then we talk about entering the professional world, where maybe we didn't have professional women to model to us what this looks like and what does it look like to us, and who cares what it looks like to someone else. And I find that it really is up to us to exemplify that to others. Now, as far as earlier, Dr. Portillo, you were talking about being a model. And I vividly remember being in my classroom one year and putting up bell work. And one student, I'm going to leave him nameless, was like, I had asked, what college are you going to go to and what do you want to do when you get older? And he said, Ms. Vasquez, I'm not going to go to college. Mexicans don't go to college. And I remember looking at him and I was like, I'm Mexican and I went to college. And he's like, no, but it's not, you're just one, the rest of us don't. And there was this separation. So when that story and femininity to me all bleeds together, it truly does, because really embracing your femininity and and it's really giving other people permission to as well. And not that they need our permission, but it's showing them that, yes, I can be a strong, powerful, beautiful, impactful woman. That success can look like this. So I also believe that, personally, as I grew up in a neighborhood full of boys, and I played with boys for the longest time. I was the tomboy, and that masculine trait, I think, is what I was able to dive and grit into that because of my masculinity. And I acknowledge that I have a masculine and I have a feminine. However, knowing now that my strength is in my feminine, and I too am on that journey that you are. And when you said that, like, you're speaking to my heart, because that's exactly what it is we're on this journey. And I think as it's not even an age thing, it's an experiential thing. And once you experience so much and you realize that, wait a second, my power place as a woman is in my feminine. So I'm going to pass the mic so we can talk about feminism, which is another topic that I'm looking forward to.
And if you're watching, this is when you should just take out your pen and paper. Dr. Portillo, go ahead.
So again, this is my opinion, right? My opinion. So when I think about feminism, the official definition, I think, has to do with advocacy of equality in women and males. I think, though, my own take on it is really being eager to promote and support and help and compliment and cheer on other women leaders, and then also the males, the brothers that we have that are really working to understand better, to support us as well. I've been so fortunate to have such great experiences with people that have seen in me leadership qualities that I maybe didn't see in myself, and have developed them in me, and have corrected me when there's things that I did that probably weren't the best move, right? But those things, that correction and that advice and feedback helped me to be better. And I think it's really powerful when we are able to then use our own relationships, our closeness, our experiences to bring up others. And I would say that feminism is about not breaking down barriers, but bringing others up, and showing through evidence, through clear and personal evidence, wow, that person is challenging the mindset that I might have about women, or the mindset that I might have about Latinas, right? Some of the when I would see kids as a principal and as a teacher that were being successful, oftentimes their peers would say, "Oh, lucky, you're so good at math." And really, you have to, I say it like how their voice was, like, "Ooh, lucky." But really, it's not about luck. None of us are really naturally smarter. I mean, we might have like a couple of little bit from the other, but it's really about something maybe you're naturally a little bit more comfortable with, but the opportunities that you take advantage of to make that be a strength of yours, right? So within our females and our males, I would always correct that and say, you know, but mija or mijo, what did you do to make that happen? You know, and they'd be like, oh, I don't know, I just did. I got lucky. No, 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 no. And really like challenging that it's not luck and things don't happen by accident. They happen because you did something and someone else did something to support you, right? And then the next question would be, how can you help the rest of us be good at that? So that you're already like planting in their seed that sense of mentorship. And I have to say, I've had some phenomenal mentors, males and females. Some of my very first professional male mentors that really opened doors for me were white males. You know, and I'm not saying that they're 100% perfect, but they were very bold and forward and giving a young 29-year-old the responsibility of running a school with, we had 1,100 students. Oh. You know, I have to say that, and he surrounded me, in being bold, he knew that I needed to be successful, right? So he surrounded me with mentors and people that could help me and catch me and help guide me to be successful. And then I've had some phenomenal female mentors as well that have helped along the way, both professionally and personally. So I have to say that that's one of the best ways to break these social injustices, whether it be racism, classism, sexism, is really through helping others up.
For sure, for sure. I like that you put this in your like feminism in a lens that's it's not necessarily the definition that we hear or understand, and that's something, you know, that I'm taking to heart as I try to be better and understand that while I may think of myself as the biggest ally to women and women's causes, that there are still a lot of elements in my day-to-day that could use work. And not having been told that directly until somebody called out my interrupting, you know, at times was when I realized, oh, I'm actually becoming one of those guys, you know, or I am one of those guys. And you know, so these types of conversations are and calling out things when you see it, from people calling you out on, you know, on the street for something, to the little things that men do that are built off of microaggressions. Like it's all you know, taking the time to listen, and if you are, you know, wanting to understand, but also there's that whole world of men who aren't trying to understand necessarily at the moment. And then, you know, things like feminism and the pressures and stresses that young girls, especially young Latina girls, feel like they have, or very well do have within their families. What's the way forward in terms of just some of those elements? You know, affirmation, visibility, like you both have kind of exemplified, have been incredible. What would you like to see change within the culture, within our communities, as kind of the more immediate thing? Is there anything else you can add in terms of the way forward? Stephanie, we'll start with you.
You know, really, I think it's about having candid conversations. Let's have some just real conversations, starting with our little ones at home, at the dinner table, you know, all the way up through, you know, the business room and wherever else. I think let's just start being real. And I also acknowledge that there's this, like, of course, let's be respectful. But when we talk about topics like this, when we talk about feminism, when we talk about how we're so polarized sometimes, and we talk about the discrimination between, you know, systemic oppression, all these topics are so heavy, and we want to be PC about it. But let's just talk about it. It starts with the conversation. It's acknowledging first that there is an issue, and going in on it and sharing each other's experiences without judgment. Because we're really quick to have a response of like, oh, and feel defensive about it. However, like Dr. Portillo was saying, in our storytelling, there's so much underneath it. And I think that we need to open up our mouths and speak. There had been so many countless times that I had walked away from situations and not said anything. And it would take a chip at my self-esteem, and I would minimize myself to this space where how other people may have interpreted me. And it wasn't until I took my voice and I've decided and I made a commitment to self, like, okay, Stephanie, I'm not going to walk away and think I should have, could have, and would have. So I highly encourage all of us to openly have these discussions. And when you have questions, ask them. And when you question where someone's coming from, to question where they're coming from rather than walk away in judgment.
Now, Stephanie, if I can also ask, so how would you define feminism?
You know, to me, it's simplicity. It's just equity.
Okay.
Like feminism, we all just want to be equal, irregardless of our, you know, our gender, irregardless of our nationality, irregardless of how much money we make, irregardless of our zip codes, all of it. Like feminism to me is all encompassing, because as a woman, we're not just looking at ourselves, we're looking at our children, we're looking at our community, we're looking at all of it. So we're just looking for equitable playing ground.
Thank you, Stephanie. Dr. Portillo, any thoughts on that subject in terms of you know, the way forward and what you would suggest?
Well, as I think about a step forward is looking at numbers. So as we think about what we like or what we believe or what, that's important, but the numbers are pretty telling, right? So in whatever work we do, if we're in a classroom, if we're in a department, in a school or in a business or government or whatever, is really looking at numbers. And if those numbers aren't representative of the population as a whole, then there's a problem we need to look at, right? And really studying what are the best options, instead of going in with a solution, really studying what are the best options and bringing in, being inclusive of that community to determine, okay, well, here are some tried and true research-based options. What do you all think? And are there things that haven't been researched, because the researchers didn't even think about it yet, that we could add to try to bring the solutions, yes, from a outside lens, because oftentimes our community, if they haven't experienced, they won't have ideas or options. But then also bringing in the options that they do come up with and melding those so that you are looking at numbers and being more results driven, rather than just talking about stuff, being about stuff, right? Don't just talk about it, be about it. Look for results. So an example, say in a math department, and they're looking at number of kids participating in AP calculus. You know, as you look at those number of students and you're looking at the representative school body, if you don't have a representative group there of females, males, African-American students, Latino students, Anglo students, whatever students you have in your population, then there's a problem. And it's not as simple as saying, okay, we're gonna put all the Latinas in the class. It's really about looking at the system then, okay, so as we look back to our freshman experience or at our sister schools in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, how do we look back and create a track, a path, so that when years from now, it's gonna be more representative. But in the meanwhile, yes, how do we sometimes cut these people a break so that we're looking at it and giving them the opportunity to be there, but also the supports needed to be successful. Going back to the example of being a young principal, they didn't just give me the chance so I could go in there and fail, and I would have failed without their support. They surrounded me with a communications expert, a finance expert, an HR expert, other more experienced principals, you know, pedagogy experts who came in and supported me and helped me be successful. And I think that's the wraparound as we create equity and look at numbers. Once we do open the door for people, is not just getting them in isn't the solution. It's about getting them in and then supporting them to get through successfully. And that way they can open doors for the rest. So yeah, I think next steps would be to really look at numbers and look at results, not just intention.
Wonderful. And so to kind of piggyback off of like that framework that Dr. Portillo said, Stephanie, you know, and applying it to the business community, you know, and learning, you know, and just preparation for this talk about the barriers that Latinos face in just getting loans to start businesses, and the stark contrast to you know, their white counterparts, and then even more so Latinas business owners. Those are a lot of structures that really are the door many times, sometimes the first door that you have. How can we, using the kind of the framework and looking at the numbers, looking at the systems, all those things, what do you think, is there a step before that needs to happen? How can we ensure that we are surrounding our interested Latina business focused leaders to be able to fulfill those desires as well?
I love the idea of the wraparound concept. And unfortunately, I'll tell you, as a businesswoman, I didn't feel wrapped around. So I think this is why I wrap around. So the foundation has not necessarily been set. I mean, now there's all this hoorah about, wow, look at Latinas are, we're at 800% opening up businesses. However, what we're not telling you is that as Latinas, we hit the ceiling at $500,000, which $500,000 may seem like a lot of money to people, but when you're running a business, you're lucky to pay your bills at $500,000. So I think this is where we come in. This is kind of what we were talking about the little students in our classrooms that don't see themselves in success. They don't see themselves as business owners. They don't have the support. No one's talked to them about their potentiality. So really, I think this is where, I started a nonprofit because of the lack of support that I felt. And this isn't oh, woe was me. That's not this at all. This is one of those things that's like, yes, here we go. Hear me roar. I know what I didn't have, so I know what needs to be done. So really, I think that's, in the bigger picture, yes, I sell coffee. I do. However, that's just the mechanism, because it's this experience that has really kind of, it has opened up the blinders at what's next and what needs to be done. And I'm going to just put on my woman business hat on right now. We really do need to wrap ourselves around and support our woman-owned businesses.
No, that's quite the TED Talk. So thank you for all of that. So we're near the end of this talk, and I feel like there's still a lot that I'd love to hear. But as we transition towards like the last few questions, can you think back about some of these earlier experiences and of the icons that existed or didn't exist for you, and maybe why? Are there others that the visibility you kind of both shown how why it's so important? Who was visible for you, and who kept you from ever doubting this confidence that you have? And Stephanie, do you mind starting?
Hands down, my mama. My mom, like that woman to this day, I never see her sweat. I never see her sweat, and she always figures it out. You would never know if she was ever feeling any pressure, because she just keeps on going. Whether it's falling forward or prevailing forward, the woman just goes, and you would never ever know this. So and I think as a young girl, I didn't recognize it because she was just my mom. She's just making me dinner and making sure I went to school. However, as a mother and as a woman that has had some experiences in life, I'm able to have a broader view. But I mean, I can't even say enough about my mother. So number one, and then all those women that I don't know, but I see. You can see a determined woman. You can see a powerful woman. You can see a woman who is creating impact and loving herself. So, I mean, everywhere I go, you can see them, and it's just like, and I attempt to make it a thing to just be like, hey, I see you, because a lot of times we don't think we're seen.
I want to can I applaud, or I never know how to react when I'm not in person. A bottle of champagne is appropriate, I think.
Yes, please.
Some of these. No, Dr. Portillo, who are your icons?
Yeah, definitely. My mom is hands down, and my grandmother too. Just they made all kinds of magic happen. They
Right.
Rub the nickel to make 50 cents. Is that what the saying is? $1 out of 15 cents or whatever. Anyway, they made things happen with what resources they had. That I think that sense of, I do remember both of them having challenges, but I always remember dusting themselves off and moving up and on. So that falling forward sense, I think is critical. Professionally, You all probably know her as Dr. Lupita Hightower, one of the superintendents in Tolleson. She is the superintendent in Tolleson Elementary District. Her and I think the other, just the network that we have of other Latina, Dora Barrio is another one that I really look up to as a female. Dr. Rene Diaz, one of the males that I always say, you know, our brothers also have really worked hard to move us forward. My current superintendent, Dr. Boyce, Dr. Geston, professionally, I just had a great opportunity to be mentored and supported by many icons. Females, of course, I have a magnetic call towards them because of the work that they do. Dr. Althea Allen, Michelle Gales in Phoenix Union. There's just so many women that I look up to and admire. But I think too, not excluding that there's a lot of males out there that really, really have helped us and supported us. Yeah, so I've had so much luck with having so many. And Stephanie Parra.
Yes. Same type of you know, power, same type of confidence, same type of energy that, you know, not just because she's my boss, but I'm very lucky to work with three incredible colleagues who are all women and who I learn from tremendously every single day. And so it's I'm grateful for the opportunity, and it's one in which I'm feeling, you know, some of those things that you've described, and perhaps, you know, wanting to make sure that I'm meeting folks there as well, and providing that same listening and support. And so thank you to both of you. Before we let you go, we do end Que Sepas with the same two questions, just to hear your thoughts and kind of end things a little more lighthearted. The first question is still related to icons, and so if you choose the same one, that's okay. But this is a hypothetical related to the game Loteria. If hypothetically, we are all in education is revamping the game, modernizing it to reflect the values and the cultures, the diversity, and we've asked you to nominate a new icon for the card. What would you nominate and why? It can be person, place, thing, entity, feeling.
I think one of the pictures I sent to Stephanie is myself in a cutout of Michelle Obama. Like it's like really close. So it looks like I'm actually giving her a high five. But I would say La Obama. That would be
yeah, no, that's great. That's a good one. That one's a new one too. Yeah, I like it. Stephanie, what about you?
So I have this image in my head, and I'm going to do my very best to share with you what it is. And I think it kind of just goes along line with being able to identify. But I'm just thinking of this just beautifully fabulous woman who has all these crazy powers to raise a family, to run a business, run a school district, you know, do all these great things and still just take care of herself and just be like, excuse my French, but just be a badass. Yeah. Like, what does that look like?
I mean, I think that's one of the big questions, and I think that's why that's this right here, right? Yeah. I feel like I thought of my abuela too, and Stephanie and everybody, all the incredible women who we know have committed to their cause of just being, you know, taking care of the community many times. And I don't know what that picture would look like, but I see it too. And I love it.
That reminds me of an apron that, you know, because we used to do like grill outs for our staff all the time. So my staff gave me an apron one time and it said La Matatona. So maybe that would be the.
You see what I see in here.
Yeah, okay. No, and so the final question is related to the chancla, which for some kids growing up was a disciplinary measure, form of punishment. And so if we are talking of today, in this like moment today, this hour, how do you feel? Is there anything you want to cancel or throw the chancla at? Again, personal, maybe depending, or entity, feeling, whatever the case might be. What do you want to throw the chancla at today?
I have two chanclas. I don't know about y'all, but I wear two. You know, in the lightness of it and talking about, you know, being feminine, all those things. So the broken nail that happened today, I want to throw my chancla at that. But in all seriousness, I would love to throw the false sense of fear that holds us all back. all
Yeah.
of us. We can all think about times that fear has held us back to being our bold, true selves. So that's where my chancla with the little heels going.
Okay. I hear it, I see it, I feel it.
We have the same chancla because mine, I had two also. One I thought about when you mentioned, Stephanie, about leaving a situation and not having spoken up. And I have those situations that I've carried with me. And so I would like to throw a chancla at not using our voice, not staying quiet when it's important that we speak up. And then also the same thing, these limitations that we set on ourselves, that we could do this or that rather than and, right? That magic and power behind and rather than or.
I love that. The imposter syndrome, right? It's something we didn't even really get to even unpack, and such a important topic, especially as we look towards a better tomorrow. But to you both, thank you for your message of just being unapologetic. It's inspiring, and it's encouraged me to do the same and the same pursuits. And so thank you both for what you've provided for our community, but what you provided for us as well. And so until next time.
Thank you for inviting us, and maybe we could actually meet up at Stephanie's coffee shop. I'm sorry, yeah.
Yes, and I'll bring more chanclas so we can throw those together.
Yeah, tell me the name again, Stephanie.
It's Fair Trade Cafe.
Fair Trade. Yeah, I just know it's in that corner.
Yeah. As long as you know how to get there, that's good.
In the corner, right? Yeah. So yeah, at Fair Trade Cafe, we can meet up for a cafecito because it was fun.
Yes, for sure. We're getting close to that, to being able to those experiences again, and it's been way past due. So looking forward to it. Thank you both. Have a great day, and thank you to everyone watching for joining us for another episode. Until next time, thank you.